A single sunrise at Stonehenge reveals an ancient secret. That perfect alignment of stone and solstice sun is not a unique event. From the pyramids of Giza pointing to Orion's belt, to the temples of Angkor Wat mirroring the stars of Draco, cultures across the world spoke a silent language of stone and sky. Today, we decode the global pattern of monument alignment with natural landforms. By the end, you will see the map of human history not as scattered fragments, but as a single, interconnected story with profound implications for who we are. Why would builders separated by vast oceans and thousands of years repeat the same celestial blueprints? Could these patterns be fragments of a forgotten worldwide knowledge? What does it say about us that our greatest monuments were built not just for glory, but as bridges to the cosmos? That shepherd's world was written in stone and shadow. Without a single written word, he navigated by the silent grammar of the earth itself. A distant V-shaped notch in the mountains became his calendar, marking the day the sun began its long return. A solitary, towering peak was not just a landmark, it was the axis of his universe, a sacred pillar connecting his community to the realms above. This intuitive reading of the land is humanity's first and most universal language. Scholars call it geomancy or sacred geography, the deliberate practice of weaving our structures into the existing tapestry of the natural world. It is the profound impulse to align a temple with a mountain, to orient a tomb toward a specific star's rising point, or to place a city where two rivers meet. The goal was harmony, a tangible link between the human, the earthly, and the celestial. As the historian John Mitchell observed, the sacred landscape is a mirror of the heavens. Ancient planners sought this symbolic unity, believing that by reflecting cosmic order on Earth, they could tap into its stability and power. These alignments were never just one thing. A single stone circle, for instance, could serve as an agricultural calendar, warning of coming frosts, a pilgrimage destination that reinforced shared stories with every journey, and a physical model of the cosmos where each stone represented an ancestor or a god. We can separate these intentions into two broad, often overlapping categories. Topographic alignments connect man-made points to physical features, a temple doorway framing a sacred mountain. Astronomical alignments target celestial events like the solstice sunrise, yet in practice they constantly intertwine. The mountain itself might only be considered sacred because the sun rises directly behind it on the king's birthday. Consider the vast Nazca lines in Peru. From the ground, they are mysterious scratches in the desert, but from above, we see not only giant birds and spiders, but lines that run arrows straight for miles, converging on the distant foothills of the Andes. Research suggests many of these lines also align with underground water sources, mapping the lifeblood of the desert onto its surface. This was a landscape prayer, a way of saying we see the hidden forces that sustain us, and we honor them in the only way we know how, by drawing our devotion across the earth itself. It makes you wonder, in our modern cities of straight grids and artificial light, what profound vocabulary have we forgotten? We no longer read the sunrise against a mountain peak to know when to plant. We've lost that intimate dialogue with the terrain. Understanding this foundational language of landscape is crucial because it transforms random monuments into intentional statements. When we see the same statement made in the deserts of Egypt, the jungles of Cambodia, and the plains of England, we must ask what deeper conversation they were all having with the world around them. The language of the land finds its perfect echo in the movements of the heavens. High on a mesa in Choco Canyon, under a sky so vast it feels like a different ocean, a figure carefully scratches a line into a sandstone slab. He is not recording a battle or a harvest, but the slow, patient dance of the moon. This mark represents a single point in a cycle that takes 18.5 years to complete. That profound, long-term observation was not kept on a fragile scroll. It was embedded into the very architecture of the community. The great kivas, the massive ceremonial structures, were laid out with a geometry that mirrors this celestial clockwork. This shift from earth to sky reveals the second pillar of our global pattern, a relentless human drive to monumentalize time itself. Across continents, our ancestors aligned their greatest works with solar, lunar, and stellar events, transforming silent stones into a grand, stone-built calendar. The winter solstice sunrise piercing the heart of Newgrange's Passage tomb in Ireland, the summer solstice sun setting in perfect alignment with Heel stone at Stonehenge, these are the most famous solar alignments. They mark the year's extremes, the turning points of light and dark that governed planting and harvest, but the ambition went deeper. The moon follows a far more complex path, with points in its cycle, called the major and minor lunar standstills, that only repeat every 18.6 years. Evidence suggests the builders of Stonehenge tracked these subtle shifts with a set of 4 peripheral stones, creating a lunar observatory of staggering patience. Then there are the stars. The 3 pyramids of Giza are famously arranged in a pattern that mirrors the 3 stars of Orion's belt, as they would have appeared in the sky over 10,000 years ago. This is a stellar alignment, fixing a moment of cosmic mythology in permanent stone. How did they achieve such precision without modern tools? It comes down to 2 fundamental concepts. The first is azimuth, which is simply the horizontal angle measured along the horizon where a celestial body rises or sets. An architect would cite a notch between 2 distant hills where the sun appeared on a specific day, and that line became the central axis of the temple. The second is declination. Think of it as the celestial latitude. It is the measure of how far north or south an object is in the sky relative to the celestial equator. The sun's declination changes throughout the year, reaching its maximum at the solstices. By understanding these angles, builders could encode specific calendar dates into stone. Pioneering researcher Anthony Aveni calls this practice embedding time in space. It was a fusion of rigorous science and deep symbolism. The Intihuatana stone at Machu Picchu is a perfect example. This elegantly carved granite pillar, whose name means the hitching post of the sun, casts no shadow at solar noon on the equinoxes. Its carefully angled planes mark the solstices with distinct shadows. It is a sundial, a calendar, and a sacred object all in one, physically tying the Inca emperor to the sun god. This was not mere stargazing. It was a generations-long project of observation, a lunisolar calendar critical for survival and ritual. What does it say about a culture that invests centuries in watching the sky and then building that knowledge into the landscape? It speaks of an intellectual ambition that viewed humanity as an active participant in a cosmic order. But this revelation leads to an even more puzzling question. If cultures from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Peru were independently developing this sophisticated celestial science, why do their architectural choices so often converge? The answer may lie not in the stars themselves, but in the mysterious lines drawn between them on the ground. The pilgrim's sandals whisper against the ancient stone, each step a deliberate ascent from one plane of existence to another. At Borobudur in Java, the journey is the destination. The massive Buddhist temple is built as a 3-dimensional mandala, its 9 stacked terraces guiding the faithful from the world of desire at the base, through the world of forms in the middle, to the formless realm of enlightenment at the summit. The final, central stupa is not merely a decorative dome. It is the axis of the universe, the still point around which all creation turns. This profound architectural experience reveals the third, and perhaps most powerful, foundational concept behind our global pattern, the axis mundi. Across cultures and continents, the human imagination has consistently envisioned a cosmic center, a world pillar or world tree that connects the underworld, the earth, and the heavens. This is the spiritual engine that drove the alignment of monuments. It was not just about marking time or honoring a mountain, but about creating a permanent gateway to the divine. The scholar of religion Mircea Eliade described this impulse perfectly, noting that the manifestation of the sacred ontologically founds the world. In simpler terms, when people experienced a place or a moment as sacred, they felt it gave order and meaning to the entire cosmos. Their monuments were attempts to build that order into the landscape, to make a specific spot a conduit for that energy. Think of Yggdrasil, the immense ash tree in Norse mythology whose roots and branches hold the 9 worlds. Or the sacred world tree in Mayan belief which stood at the center of creation. These are not just stories, they are blueprints. A temple aligned to become an axis mundi was performing an act of cosmic ordering. It was saying, here at this precise point the realms touch. We see this in the Omphalos stones, the navels of the world. At Delphi in Greece, a stone was revered as the center of the world, the meeting point of 2 eagles released by Zeus from opposite ends of the earth. The architecture of entire cities could mirror this idea. Teotihuacan in Mexico, the city of the gods, is laid out with its central avenue of the dead aligned not to a solstice sunrise, but to the setting of the Pleiades star cluster. This mirroring of celestial patterns on the ground, called archaeoastronomy, was a way of bringing the sky down to earth, making the city itself a terrestrial echo of the cosmic order. The phenomenon goes even deeper with light and shadow. At Chichén Itzá, the Pyramid of El Castillo is a masterpiece of this principle. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase, creating the stunning illusion of a feathered serpent, the deity Kukulkan, slithering down to earth. This is not an accident of architecture. It is a calculated, ceremonial event where the building itself, aligned with solar precision, becomes the axis mundi for a few sacred moments, bridging the human and the divine. And sometimes the axis mundi is not built at all but recognized. Uluru, the immense sandstone monolith in Central Australia, is a natural axis mundi for the Anangu people. Every crevice, waterhole, and color shift in the rock is part of a living narrative, a sacred geography where ceremonies and songlines are precisely aligned to its form. The land itself is the temple, so we must ask a reflective question. In seeking to connect their greatest monuments to this perceived cosmic center, what were these ancient builders truly trying to achieve? Beyond practical calendars and territorial markers, they were attempting to anchor their entire civilization, their understanding of reality, to something permanent and divine. The staggering labor of moving multi-ton stones, the generations of precise observation, all make a deeper sense when we see it as a spiritual imperative, a longing to build a doorway to eternity. This profound motivation prepares us to step back and see the connections not just between stone and star, but across continents, on a geographical scale that challenges everything we thought we knew about our isolated past. 2 colossal stepped pyramids rise from the dust of history, separated by an ocean of time and space. In ancient Mesopotamia, the ziggurat of built around 4,000 years ago, ascends toward the heavens as a stairway for the gods. Over 8,000 miles away and 2 millennia later, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico echoes this very form, a massive terraced mountain of stone. They share more than a shape. Both are precisely oriented, their corners and staircases aligned to cardinal directions and celestial events. This visual echo is not an isolated case. It is the fourth and most profound foundational mystery. the appearance of nearly identical architectural and alignment principles in cultures that, according to the conventional historical record, never met. This is the great puzzle of parallel invention, the core of a debate between two compelling ideas, diffusionism and independent invention. On one side is the theory of diffusion, the idea that a seed of knowledge, a blueprint or a tradition, was carried across the world by ancient travelers. Proponents like researcher Graham Hancock point to these architectural echoes as evidence of a lost, advanced maritime civilization, a common teacher whose legacy was preserved in stone long after their name was forgotten. They ask, is it more likely that dozens of cultures independently invented the stepped pyramid, the precise solar calendar, and the sacred geometry of the circle, or that this knowledge had a single, forgotten source? Mainstream archaeology, however, largely champions the concept of independent invention or psychic unity. This view, supported by scholars like Stephen Oppenheimer, who studies ancient coastal migrations, suggests that humans everywhere, faced with the same fundamental questions of survival, time, and the sacred, arrived at similar symbolic and technological solutions. The human brain, observing the same sun, moon, and stars, might naturally develop similar patterns of thought and expression. It is the story of convergent cultural evolution, where similar environmental and spiritual challenges yield similar architectural answers. The evidence for these parallels is etched in stone across the globe. Consider the relentless pursuit of cardinal orientation. From the Great Pyramid of Giza, whose sides align almost perfectly with the four directions, to the Forbidden City in Beijing, laid out on a north-south axis, this practice appears universal. It represents a desire to impose a cosmic order, to align human space with the fundamental geometry of the cosmos. Equinoctial alignments are another global theme. The sun's path on the spring and autumn equinoxes, when day and night are equal, was a powerful symbol of balance. The main avenue of the Karnak temple complex in Egypt is aligned to the sunset on the winter solstice, a principle mirrored at Angkor Wat in Cambodia, where the central tower frames the rising sun on the spring equinox. Both are orchestrating light to mark a sacred moment. The stars tell a similar story. The brightest star, Sirius, was critical to the Egyptian calendar, with temples aligned to its heliacal rising. On the other side of the world, the Maya also tracked Sirius with precision. Meanwhile, the complex lunar cycles marked at Stonehenge find a startling parallel in the Mnajdra temple complex on Malta, where sunlight penetrates specific chambers during equinoxes and solstices, suggesting a sophisticated lunisolar calendar. Perhaps most haunting are the serpent effigies. The Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, a vast earthwork shaped like a coiling snake, aligns to the summer solstice sunset. This mirrors the ancient Chinese practice of Feng Shui, where serpentine dragon lines, or lung mei, representing waterways and terrestrial energy, were carefully mapped and honored through the placement of tombs and cities. Both cultures saw the serpent as a primal earth energy and aligned their sacred landscapes to its perceived flow. So we are left with a question that resonates at the heart of our investigation. Are these countless parallels simply a magnificent series of coincidences, the product of a shared human neurology? Or are they the scattered fragments of a once global dialogue, a forgotten organizing principle that guided our ancestors in a collective project to harmonize with the universe? The answer may determine whether we see human history as a series of isolated sparks, or as a single, slowly unfolding story written in aligned stone. To find a pattern, we must step back even further, to view the entire planet not as a collection of sites, but as a potential canvas for a design of unimaginable scale. Alfred Watkins stood over a worn map of the English countryside in 1921, and the landscape before him shifted. He saw not a random scattering of ancient sites, but a series of startlingly straight tracks connecting old churches, burial mounds, and hilltop forts. He called them lays, and his vision ignited a firestorm of speculation that burns to this day. This introduces our fifth investigative lens, the provocative idea of geodetic knowledge and ley lines. It proposes that our ancestors did more than align single monuments to mountains or stars. They plotted entire networks of sites across vast distances, following a hidden geometry of the Earth itself. Watkins, a keen observer, described it with poetic clarity. He wrote, "Imagine a ferry chain stretched from mountain peak to mountain peak, as far as the eye could see." He believed these were prehistoric trading routes or pilgrimage paths, marked and remembered through generations. This concept pushes beyond coincidence into the realm of a possible lost science, an ancient understanding of geodesy, the measurement and mapping of the Earth's shape and features. Could they have been plotting points on a grand spiritual grid? The theory splits into two distinct branches. The first is the empirical observation of alignments. It is statistically verifiable that many ancient sites in regions like Britain fall along straight lines for miles. The famous St. Michael's Ley is one proposed example, a straight alignment running across southern England that connects prehistoric stone circles, medieval churches dedicated to the Archangel Michael, and natural hills like Glastonbury Tor. From a high vantage point, these sites can indeed be sighted in a row, suggesting they could have been used as a visual navigation system. The tools for such surveying were elegantly simple: sighting poles, a basic chroma for marking right angles, and a deep knowledge of the horizon. A prominent landmark like Glastonbury Tor, visible for miles, would have served as a perfect beacon, a node in this imagined web. But the second branch of the theory ventures into more esoteric territory. Here, ley lines are thought to be channels for Earth energies, perhaps related to terrestrial magnetism or subtle telluric currents flowing through the ground. Proponents suggest ancient cultures could sense these energies and built their sacred sites upon them to harness spiritual power or enhance healing. This is where mainstream archaeology often raises a skeptical eyebrow, citing a cognitive phenomenon called apophenia, the human tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. When you have thousands of ancient sites dotting a landscape, they argue, drawing straight lines between some of them is almost a mathematical certainty. The debate finds a focal point in places like the Bimini Road in the Bahamas. Off the coast, a submerged formation of large, rectangular limestone blocks appears to form a paved path on the seafloor. Some researchers claim it is part of a vast Atlantean grid, aligned with other supposed sites like the pyramids of Giza. To skeptics, it is a natural geological formation, beach-rock that fractured in straight lines. So we must ask a reflective and crucial question. If some of these alignments are intentional, beyond simple line of sight navigation, what was their ultimate purpose? Was it for practical trade and travel, creating a sacred geography for pilgrimage that wove the land with story? Or does it point to a forgotten understanding of the planet as a living entity, with points of spiritual resonance like acupuncture nodes on a massive body? Whether one sees meticulous planning or selective pattern matching, this lens fundamentally challenges us to view the landscape not as a collection of isolated wonders, but as a potentially interconnected web. This shift in perspective prepares us to zoom in and examine the specific and often undeniable patterns that emerge when we look at particular regions of the world, where the evidence for a shared architectural language becomes impossible to ignore. The dawn light on the summer solstice does not simply rise over Egypt, it performs a miracle. From the depths of the Abu Simbel sanctuary to the pillared halls of Karnak, a single, razor-sharp beam of sunlight travels south to north, tracing the sacred spine of the Nile itself. This river was not just a source of water, it was the central axis of an entire cosmology, the ultimate natural landform that dictated a civilization's dialogue with the cosmos. In the narrow, predictable ribbon of the Nile Valley, ancient Egyptian architects perfected the most coherent and enduring alignment tradition the world has ever seen. Their system was built on a profound duality. The east-west axis, perpendicular to the river's flow, was the path of the sun god Ra. This was the domain of cyclical time, of daily death and rebirth, where the sun set in the west, traveled through the underworld, and rose renewed in the east. Tombs and temples were oriented to this solar journey, ensuring the soul's participation in eternal renewal. But the north-south axis, running parallel with the life-giving Nile, pointed to something even more permanent. It aligned with the circumpolar stars, those eternal lights that never set, which the Egyptians called the imperishable ones. This axis represented timelessness, the unchanging cosmic order they called Mat. Their greatest monuments were bridges between these two realms, the cyclical and the eternal. The precision they achieved remains breathtaking. Egyptologist Mark Lehner's work reveals that the Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to true north with an error of just 3/60ths of a single degree. How was this possible over 4,000 years ago? They used an elegant tool called a merkit, a forked sighting stick with a plumb line. An astronomer priest would track the arc of a specific circumpolar star, like Dub in the Big Dipper, marking its rising and setting points on the horizon. The midpoint between these 2 points gave them a perfect north-south line. This was not guesswork, it was rigorous, repeatable celestial engineering. This knowledge was then encoded into architecture with stunning symbolic purpose. The narrow air shafts within the Great Pyramid do not ventilate, they target. One points directly to the pole star of its era, anchoring the pharaoh to the imperishable realm. Another aims precisely at the star Sirius, whose heliacal rising heralded the Nile's annual flood and the Egyptian New Year. At Abu Simbel, the Grand Temple of Ramses II is designed so that twice a year, sunlight penetrates over 200 feet into the mountain, illuminating the statues of Ra and the deified pharaoh in the inner sanctuary. One of these dates is believed to be the king's birthday, literally connecting his rule to the sun's power. Further north, the Great Sphinx gazes precisely eastward, its lion body facing the rising sun on the spring equinox. And at Heliopolis, the cult center of Ra, towering obelisks were not mere monuments. They were considered petrified rays of the sun, their pyramidal tips, called pyramidions, often sheathed in electrum to catch the first and last light, physically fusing the Earth with the solar disk. So we must ask, how did this specific geography forge such a unified tradition? The Nile Valley was a narrow, predictable corridor, a controlled environment bounded by desert. This allowed for centuries of uninterrupted observation and a stable priesthood to preserve and refine their astronomical data. The river provided both a literal and metaphorical flow, a clear north-south line upon which to map the heavens. Their entire world was a long, thin strip of order between two chaotic deserts, and their architecture magnificently reflected that, creating a mirror of the cosmos in stone. This represents alignment tradition at its most centralized and systematic. But to see the true breadth of the global pattern, we must now journey to a landscape that is the polar opposite of Egypt's orderly river valley, a place where the very earth seems alive and the sacred geography is written not in straight lines but in serpentine paths. The Nile's perfect geometry gives way to a world of coiled energy and living stone. In the dense jungles of Palenque, a Mayan ruler stands atop the Temple of the Inscriptions at the Zenith Passage, that moment when the sun hangs directly overhead and casts no shadow. For a breath, he is not merely a king but a conduit, the axis upon which the sun god's power flows directly into the heart of the city. This was the Mesoamerican vision, not a reflection of cosmic order, but its active, breathing recreation. Here, entire cities were engineered as cosmograms, precise scale models of the universe, where every pyramid, plaza, and palace was aligned to sacred mountains, star paths, and the pulsing rhythm of sacred time. Theirs was a universe in constant, dynamic balance, and architecture was the tool to maintain it. At the core of this system were two interlocking calendars. The 260-day sacred count, the Tzolk'in, woven from the numbers 13 and 20, governed ritual life and destiny. The 365-day solar hob tracked the agricultural year. Together, they formed the calendar round, a 52-year cycle that was a heartbeat of Mayan civilization. Monumental architecture served as the public face of this celestial clock. Structures were not passive markers, but active participants in a grand, ritual drama that unfolded with the seasons. As Mayanist scholar David Fradel described it, these were landscapes of creation, where the very act of building and aligning a city was a reenactment of the gods' work at the dawn of time. The central organizing principle was the world tree, the Wakachan. This was the axis mundi, the living pillar connecting the heavens, the earth, and the watery underworld of Xibalba. In the city plaza, this cosmic tree was often embodied by a central, towering pyramid. At Capon, the grand staircase of hieroglyphic stairway is aligned so that on certain dates, the shadow cast resembles a massive serpent, a manifestation of the celestial conduit. This connection to the underworld was literal, with sacred caves, seen as entrances to Xibalba, deliberately incorporated into city plans and often aligned with temple peaks above, creating a vertical circuit of spiritual energy. To track the sun's journey, Mayan architects developed the E-group complex, an arrangement of buildings where one structure, viewed from another, framed the sunrise at the solstices and equinoxes. But their gaze extended far beyond our sun. The planet Venus, associated with war and renewal, was meticulously tracked. At Uxmal, the imposing facade of the governor's palace is aligned to the extreme southern rising point of Venus, an event that occurs only once every 8 years. This transformed the building into a monumental calendar, its alignment announcing a period of potent, often martial, celestial influence. Further north, the grand design of Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, presents a masterclass in alignment. Its central artery, the Street of the Dead, is not oriented to true north, but offset by 15.5 degrees east. Researchers like Anthony Aveney have shown this alignment targets the setting of the Pleiades star cluster, a key marker in the Mesoamerican calendar. The entire urban plan was a terrestrial map of a celestial event, and then there is the magic of light and shadow. At Chichen Itzá, the Pyramid of El Castillo is a masterpiece of this principle. During the equinoxes, the setting sun casts a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase, creating the undulating illusion of the feathered serpent deity Kukulkan slithering down to earth. This is not a hidden alignment but a public spectacle, a moment where the engineered stone summons the divine, proving the city's role as a sustainer of cosmic order. So we must sit with a profound question these stone cosmograms force us to ask. For the Maya and their neighbors, was building an aligned city merely an act of construction, or was it a sacred duty, a literal act of sustaining the cosmos against the ever-present threat of chaos? Every solstice observed, every Venus cycle marked, was a ritual thread holding reality together. This intricate, calendar-driven pattern, so different from Egypt's solar duality, reveals the stunning cultural diversity within humanity's shared urge to build bridges to the sky. Yet, as we leave these engineered jungles, we encounter a third tradition, one that finds sacred geometry not in grand urban plans, but in the silent, monumental isolation of the islands. Mist hangs low over the peat bogs of Callanish, softening the edges of ancient gneiss. Here, the stones do not stand in a simple ring, but form a complex Celtic cross against the sky, a silent avenue leading to a central monolith taller than a house. On a clear night, the moon skims this central pillar during its extreme standstill, an event that occurs only once every 18.6 years. This is not a monument to the sun, but to the moon's slow, mysterious dance, a testament to a different kind of time. From the windswept Scottish Isles to the rolling hills of Brittany, a vast and enigmatic network of stone circles, rows, and burial mounds forms our third regional pattern, the megalithic web of Atlantic Europe. Unlike the centralized traditions of Egypt or the urban cosmograms of Mesoamerica, this pattern feels decentralized, a collective project woven across the landscape by Neolithic and Bronze Age societies connected perhaps by the sea itself. These sites suggest a shared, cohesive intellectual tradition, a common language of stone and sky that spanned centuries and vast distances. The pattern reveals a sophisticated focus. While solar alignments like those at Stonehenge are dramatic, marking the year's turning points, many of these Atlantic sites show a profound preoccupation with the more complex cycles of the moon. Tracking the lunar standstills requires generations of patient observation, a long-term investment in understanding a rhythm less obvious than the sun's annual journey. This suggests a deep, perhaps ritual, need to comprehend the full tapestry of cosmic time. Archaeoastronomer Clive Ruggles emphasizes the importance of statistical rigor when assessing these alignments, reminding us that not every stone placed on a hilltop was an observatory. Yet the consistent patterns that emerge are compelling. We can see this network's variety by exploring three key site types. First are the solar-focused circles, with Stonehenge as the iconic example. Its famous alignment to the midsummer sunrise is just one part of a larger ritual landscape that incorporates the River Avon, suggesting a ceremonial journey where the solstice light was a culminating event. Then there are the lunar-focused complexes, like the staggering stone rose at Carnac in France. Thousands of men here stretch for miles in parallel lines, and studies indicate many align to the major lunar standstill points on the horizon, turning the entire landscape into a lunar calendar of monumental scale. Finally, we find hybrid sites that masterfully combine themes. Newgrange in Ireland is a massive, decorated passage tomb. For just a few days around the winter solstice, a beam of sunlight travels down a long, narrow passageway to illuminate the inner chamber, a dramatic rebirth of light at the year's darkest point. The builders' methods were elegantly tied to their environment. They often used natural horizon features as precise foresights. A specific notch between two distant hills would be the target where the solstice sun or standstill moon would first appear, and the stone would be placed to mark that sightline from a sacred space. This practice integrated their monuments seamlessly into the living land. The chambered cairn of Michaud in Orkney offers a perfect example. Its long, low entrance passage is engineered so that the setting sun of the winter solstice shines directly down its length, flooding the central chamber with a warm, golden light for a fleeting moment before the long northern night closes in. This was architecture as celestial event, a guaranteed miracle of light and shadow built into the earth. So we must sit with a haunting question left by these silent stones. What shared belief system, what unifying vision of the cosmos could have motivated disparate communities across centuries to undertake such back-breaking labor? To haul multi-ton stones across miles, to erect them with celestial precision, and to maintain this knowledge across generations. This was more than local ritual. It suggests a widespread, cohesive tradition of learning and practice, possibly passed along coastal sea routes. The pattern speaks of a connected Atlantic world with a common spiritual and scientific vocabulary. Its existence raises a final, profound mystery that lingers in the mist. What happened to this grand, interconnected tradition? Why did the careful plotting of lunar standstills and solstice sunrises eventually fade, leaving only the stones themselves to tell a story we are still struggling to fully hear? The silent stones of Europe hold their secrets in circles and rows, but high in the Andes, the sacred geometry was drawn across an empire. An Inca roadrunner, Ecological, moved with purpose along a path that was far more than a physical trail. He followed a Ceque, an invisible but profoundly real line radiating from the very heart of the world, the Coricancha, or Temple of the Sun, in Cusco. His destination was a shrine on a distant mountain peak, a place where the stone met the sky. This was not a single pilgrimage, but part of a vast, state-mandated system that wove the Inca Empire, the Tahuantinsuyu, into the living body of the Andes. This is the fourth and perhaps most meticulously organized regional pattern, a world defined by apus and ceques. Here, alignment was not just an architectural feature, it was the operating system for an entire civilization. The Ceque system was a conceptual web of 41 or more straight lines fanning out from the Coricancha like spokes on a colossal wheel. Each line connected a sequence of huacas, sacred spots that could be a spring, an unusual rock formation, an ancient tomb, or a built shrine. Scholar Brian Bauer described it perfectly as a map of Inca social and sacred geography. This was not merely a religious network. It was a socio-political and calendrical grid that organized everything: space, time, community labor obligations, and even water rights. The endpoints of many of these lines were the apus, the towering mountain peaks revered as living deities. An apu was not just a beautiful landform, it was a powerful, conscious entity, the source of water that fed the terraces and the protective guardian of the valleys below. By aligning their sacred geography to these mountains, the Inca physically and spiritually anchored their empire to the most powerful forces in their world. Astronomy was seamlessly threaded into this web. Specific huacas along the ceques served as markers for the sunrise and sunset points during solstices and equinoxes. The maintenance of each Ceque line and its huacas was the responsibility of a specific kinship group, or Ailu. This meant that the entire calendar, the entire ritual cycle of the empire, was delegated across communities, turning celestial observation into a civic duty that reinforced social structure. The famous Inti Raymi festival, celebrating the winter solstice in June, centered on observations made from the Coricancha along a designated Ceque, directly tying the sun god's return to the imperial core. This precision extended to their legendary stonework. At Machu Picchu, the Torian, or Temple of the Sun, is a masterpiece of integrated alignment. Its curved wall contains a window that frames the sunrise on the June solstice, while inside, a ceremonial stone altar aligns with the first light of the December solstice. The entire site of Pisac, with its breathtaking terraces cascading down the mountainside, is oriented so that its central structures align with the silhouettes of specific mountain apus across the valley. Every curve of a wall, every placement of a window, was an opportunity to capture a celestial moment or honor a terrestrial power. So we must ask a reflective question, one that gets to the heart of this global investigation. Could the Inca Ceque system represent the ultimate expression of aligning human society with the sacred landscape? It was more than building monuments within the world. It was about turning the world itself into a monument. They mapped their social order, their calendar, and their cosmology directly onto the mountains and rivers, transforming the entire empire into a living, breathing testament to harmony between the human and the divine. This state-level application of alignment principles stands in stark contrast to the decentralized megalithic networks, showing us a different but equally profound cultural answer to the same universal urge. The Ceque lines of the Andes mapped a static empire, but across the world's greatest ocean, alignment became a moving target. Under a dome of stars so dense it feels like a solid ceiling, a master navigator stands on the deck of his double-hulled canoe. He feels the swell through his feet, tastes the wind, and watches the horizon. His compass is not magnetic but celestial. He waits for the star Hoculaire, what we call Arcturus, to crest precisely over the silhouette of a distant island's mountain peak. That moment tells him he is on course, steering a path across thousands of miles of empty Pacific without a single instrument. This is the fifth and most dynamic regional pattern, the stellar canoes of Polynesia, where alignment was not a practice for building permanent monuments toward fixed points, but the very science of discovery itself. Here, natural landforms were not destinations for pilgrimage. They were the signposts of a vast, watery highway. The monuments, the sacred mari or temple platforms, were the spiritual anchors placed at the end of these incredible journeys. The alignment was the star path, the kavenga, that led to them. This represents a profound shift in our understanding. In Polynesian culture, sacred geography was not locked to a single valley or mountain range. It was portable, carried in the memory of navigators, and replicated across new shores. At the heart of this system was the star compass, a mental map dividing the 360-degree horizon into 32 houses, each named for the specific star that rose or set in that sector. Polynesian navigator Nainoa Thompson, who helped revive this ancient art, explained it simply: the stars are the key to finding direction. A navigator would memorize the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars for different seasons and latitudes, creating a mental star chart that turned the moving sky into a fixed grid. This knowledge was then applied with breathtaking practicality. When a new island was discovered, its highest peak would be given a name and then linked to a specific star. The star's rising point over that peak, as seen from a neighboring island, became a reliable bearing, a celestial street sign written in light. The mari built on these new shores often reflected this cosmic connection. They were frequently oriented to cardinal directions, but more importantly, they were placed in locations that held meaning within the navigator's star map. Their alignment was often to the sea, the source of both life and ancestral memory. Consider Tapu Tapu Atia on the island of Raiatea, the central religious hub of eastern Polynesia. This great mari is aligned with the rising of the Matariki star cluster, the Pleiades, whose heliacal rising marked the new year and the season of long-distance voyaging. It was both a temple and a cosmic calendar, its orientation signaling the time to launch canoes into the ocean's expanse. Settlement patterns across the Pacific echo this celestial blueprint. In Hawaii, the land divisions known as Ahupua often ran from the mountain summit to the coral reef, aligning resource management with the sacred flow from the gods in the heights to the bounty of the sea. In New Zealand, the first Maori canoes followed specific star paths to make landfall, and the placement of fortified villages or pa often reflected the directional lineages of those founding voyages. Then there is the profound mystery of Nan Madol in Pohnpei, a city of artificial islets and canals built atop a coral reef. Its main canals are aligned to cardinal directions, and some researchers suggest its layout may mirror star patterns important to the culture that built it. This site suggests a fascinating fusion where a settled people, perhaps descended from or influenced by great voyagers, applied principles of celestial order to create a static, yet cosmically aligned capital. So we are left with a question that reframes everything. In a culture where the ocean itself was the sacred space, did the alignment of temples serve a dual purpose? They were spiritual anchors, yes, places to connect with the gods, but were they also practical navigational beacons, their locations and orientations serving as points on a vast, living map remembered in star songs and chants? This pattern reveals alignment not as a way to route oneself to one spot, but as the essential tool for the most ambitious exploration and colonization in human history. It was a science in motion, a dialogue between the fixed stars and the restless sea. The Polynesian navigator's star path is a triumph of the human mind, a solution born from isolation and necessity. But what if that same solution can be reached from completely different starting points? This leads us to the first, and most scientifically grounded, explanation for the global pattern, the theory of independent invention. Imagine two groups of children separated on different islands, each given a set of wooden blocks. Without any communication, might both groups eventually stack those blocks into a pyramid shape, simply because it is the most stable way to build something tall? This simple thought experiment captures the essence of convergent cultural evolution, the idea that similar challenges often produce similar innovations, even in complete isolation. It is the most widely accepted framework in archaeology and anthropology for explaining why pyramids, solar alignments, and sacred geographies appear across the globe. At its heart, this theory is a powerful testament to the shared cognitive toolkit of our species, Homo sapiens. We are all wired with a profound capacity for pattern recognition, a drive to find order in chaos, and an instinct to create symbols that explain our place in the world. Scholars refer to this foundational concept as psychic unity, the idea that all human minds, regardless of culture, operate with the same basic cognitive processes. When faced with the universal stimuli of the sun's daily journey, the moon's monthly phases, and the turning of the seasons, different cultures independently arrived at similar conclusions and expressed them in stone. The logic is elegantly straightforward. Any group of people observing the horizon will notice the sun consistently rises in one general area and sets in the opposite area. This undeniable east-west axis becomes a fundamental reference point, a natural line of symmetry in the world. It is a small cognitive step to associate the life-giving sun with concepts of rebirth and divinity, and to then align a temple doorway or a ruler's tomb to capture its first light, a practice seen from Egypt to Cambodia. Similarly, the human body's own bilateral symmetry, our left and right sides, likely reinforced this intuitive grasp of cardinal directions and balance, making concepts like sacred pairs or fourfold divisions feel naturally significant. Cognitive anthropologists like Pascal Boyer explore how our brains are predisposed to attribute agency and intention to the world around us. A mountain that provides water isn't just a landform, it becomes a generous spirit. A star that appears before the rains isn't just a ball of gas, it is a messenger. This intuitive reasoning leads naturally to practices of reverence and alignment, as communities seek to honor and communicate with these perceived conscious forces in the landscape and sky. We can see this theory vividly at work in the most iconic parallel, the pyramid. In Egypt, it was a smooth-sided tomb for a god-king, designed as a ramp to the stars. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurat was a stepped temple platform, a stairway for priests to approach the heavens. In Mesoamerica, the stepped pyramid was a ceremonial stage for rituals, often crowning a temple at its summit. In Southeast Asia, at sites like Borobudur, the stepped pyramid form became a three-dimensional mandala for spiritual ascent. Their internal functions and dedicated deities were utterly distinct, culturally specific elaborations. Yet their imposing, ascending form is a convergent solution to a shared human impulse, to build a monumental axis that reaches from the earthly realm toward the divine. This independent elaboration is key. The basic east-west alignment for a solstice sunrise might be a near-universal starting point, but the Maya tracking the complex 8-year cycle of Venus, or the builders of Stonehenge marking the 18.6-year lunar standstill, represent spectacular, culturally unique branches grown from that common trunk. They took the fundamental human discovery of celestial order and ran with it, developing it into intricate, localized systems of timekeeping and cosmology. So we must sit with a reflective question this theory forces upon us. If the global pattern of alignment is largely a product of our shared mental architecture, does that make it less mysterious? Or does it, in fact, make it more profoundly revealing? It suggests that our greatest monuments are not just feats of engineering, but external manifestations of the deepest workings of the human mind. Our innate need to find patterns, to seek meaning, and to connect with forces larger than ourselves literally shaped the world over and over again. This provides a solid, parsimonious foundation for understanding the parallels. Yet its very simplicity, its reliance on the slow, steady drumbeat of convergent evolution, invites us to look closer at those parallels that seem almost too precise, those connections that whisper of something more than just similar minds thinking alike. But the shared architecture of the human mind cannot explain everything. A single, devastating flood rises not in myth, but in geological fact, around 9,600 years before the Common Era. As the last ice age retreated, global sea levels surged, swallowing vast coastal plains and islands in what scientists call the meltwater pulse. Imagine the survivors of such a cataclysm, scattered like seeds across the world, carrying with them the shattered fragments of a sophisticated culture. In the legends of those who came after, these survivors would be remembered not as refugees, but as gods, as bearded strangers who emerged from the sea to teach the arts of civilization. This is the heart of the second, more controversial, overarching theory, diffusion. Its proponents argue that the alignments and architectural parallels we see are too specific, too mathematically intricate, to be the result of independent invention. They whisper of a lost seed culture, an antediluvian source whose legacy was preserved in stone long after its name was forgotten. This theory fundamentally challenges our conventional timelines, proposing a forgotten prologue to human history. It asks us to take seriously the global motif of the culture hero. Across the world, we find strikingly similar figures. In Mesopotamia, the amphibious being Ons emerged from the Erythraean Sea to teach writing, agriculture, and law to the Sumerians. In the Andes, the god Viracocha, a tall, bearded man in a long robe, arrived after a great flood to instruct humanity in the same arts. In West Africa, the Dogon people speak of the Nomos, amphibious deities who came from the star system Sirius and gave them profound astronomical knowledge. Could these be the distorted, mythologized memories of real individuals, survivors of a collapsed maritime civilization who restarted culture in isolated pockets around the globe? The evidence cited by diffusionists is a tapestry of anomalies that defy easy explanation. They point first to the sheer ubiquity of the deluge myth, found in over 500 cultures from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Popol Vuh of the Maya. While mainstream science acknowledges localized flooding events, diffusionists see a collective memory of a single, worldwide catastrophe. Then there is the complex of shared practices, pyramid building, mummification, and sun god worship, appearing in cultures separated by oceans. Why would Egyptians and pre-Incan cultures both develop the intricate, spiritually significant practice of preserving the physical form, unless the idea had a common origin? Most compelling to some is the apparent encoding of precession, the slow, 26,000-year wobble of Earth's axis. This is an extremely subtle astronomical observation. Yet, researchers like John Anthony West argued that the Sphinx, with its lion body, may have been aligned to the constellation Leo around 10,500 BCE, an epoch that coincides with that post-glacial era. He based this on geological studies of water erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure, suggesting it was weathered by prolonged, heavy rainfall, a climate Egypt has not experienced for millennia. This claim remains fiercely debated, but it highlights the kind of evidence that fuels diffusionist thought. The controversy extends to artifacts that suggest pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. The colossal stone heads of the Olmec in Mexico, with their distinctive, broad features, have led some to speculate about African influence, though most archaeologists attribute them to indigenous artistic styles. More tantalizing are the disputed forensic findings from the 1970s, when chemical tests allegedly detected traces of nicotine and cocaine, plants native to the Americas, in the tissues of Egyptian mummies. If verified, such evidence would shatter our understanding of ancient trade networks. This theory, while often marginalized in academic circles, serves a crucial purpose. It forces a rigorous re-examination of the evidence and highlights the genuine gaps in the orthodox narrative. It asks the uncomfortable questions that keep the mystery alive. Could a sophisticated, seafaring culture have circled the globe in the distant past, leaving behind a common blueprint of sacred geometry and celestial alignment as their lasting gift to humanity? Or are we, in our desire for a lost golden age, simply connecting dots that were never meant to be joined? The sound of a struck stone can hold a secret deeper than any inscription. At the Rollright Stones in England, certain megaliths produce a distinct metallic ring when tapped, a phenomenon noted for centuries. This is not mere curiosity, but a clue pointing toward our third and most sensory overarching theory, the Archaeoacoustic and Geophysical Hypothesis. It proposes that ancient builders selected and aligned their sacred sites not only by sight, but by feel and by sound, responding to subtle energies of the earth itself that modern science is only beginning to measure. This idea offers a potential missing link, a practical, empirical reason for site selection that also explains the profound, often transformative, experiences reported at these places for millennia. The field of archaeoacoustics explores this directly. Researcher Stephen Waller conducted groundbreaking experiments suggesting the very placement of stones at sites like Stonehenge creates deliberate acoustic effects. He demonstrated that the regular spacing of the megaliths can produce sound shadows, areas where certain frequencies are muted. In an era before modern physics, such an auditory illusion, where voices or drumbeats seem to emanate from nowhere or be swallowed by the stones, could easily be interpreted as the direct voice of spirits or ancestors. The architecture itself became an instrument to orchestrate supernatural experience. This principle finds stunning validation in underground chambers. Within the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni on Malta, a Neolithic subterranean complex carved from solid limestone, specific chambers resonate at a frequency of 110 Hz, a tone scientifically shown to alter brain activity, potentially inducing states of calm or heightened focus. Similarly, the passage tomb at Newgrange in Ireland is designed with a corbelled roof that creates a unique acoustic environment, where sounds linger and mix in ways that feel otherworldly. These were not accidents of construction, but features engineered to shape consciousness. Parallel to sound are the Earth's more silent energies. Many sacred sites sit directly atop geological fault lines where tectonic stresses create measurable phenomena. Geologist Robert Ceque has investigated the possibility that pressure along these faults, a process called piezoelectricity, could generate faint electromagnetic fields or even ephemeral lights, earthquake lights, that might have been seen as divine manifestations. Furthermore, a striking number of ancient monuments align with underground water aquifers. Flowing water, especially over certain types of rock, can generate weak electric currents and localized magnetic anomalies. While imperceptible to us in our electrically noisy world, individuals living in closer sensory harmony with the land might have been subtly attuned to these variations. The long-standing folk practice of dowsing, using rods or pendulums to locate water or energy lines, may be a cultural memory of this sensitivity, an intuitive method of reading the landscape's invisible currents. Perhaps the most compelling case for this integrated sensory awareness is the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. For centuries, the Pythia, the Oracle of Delphi, would deliver her prophetic utterances from a chamber built over a specific geological fissure. Modern geological surveys confirmed the presence of ethylene gas, a mild psychoactive agent rising from this fissure. When inhaled in a confined space, it can induce a trance-like state. The temple's architects did not merely build near a pretty view. They built directly upon a natural feature that chemically facilitated altered states of consciousness. They were, in effect, constructing a technology for divine connection, leveraging the Earth's own properties. This leads to a reflective and deeply intriguing question. If ancient peoples were indeed sensitive to these subtle environmental energies, were their precise alignments an act of tuning? Were they calibrating their stone circles, pyramids, and temples to function like antennas or resonators, harmonizing human ritual with the Earth's own frequency? This theory does not dismiss the spiritual or astronomical intentions, but grounds them in a tangible, sensory reality. It suggests the builders were supreme naturalists, reading a complex suite of environmental data, light, sound, magnetism, and geology, and integrating it all into a unified sacred science. Their monuments were not just aligned to the cosmos above, but plugged into the living planet below. This bridges the material and the mystical perfectly, offering a dimension of the mystery that is not only poetic but scientifically testable. As we place microphones in ancient chambers and magnetometers along old processional paths, we are slowly learning to listen to and feel the world as they did, discovering that the sacred site was not just a location, but a living, resonant experience. The desert air at Chanquillo is still and sharp as a researcher peers through the eyepiece of a theodolite. Her focus is a narrow gap between two of the 13 ancient towers that crest the ridge like a stone spine. She waits, her breath held, as the first sliver of the sun breaks the horizon precisely within that gap. A digital readout confirms the azimuth, the horizontal angle. This is not a moment of speculation, but of verification, the quiet culmination of a meticulous scientific process. This is archaeoastronomy in the field, the rigorous discipline that has transformed our understanding of ancient monuments from objects of mystery into legible texts of celestial knowledge. This work is the essential bridge between romantic wonder and verifiable fact. It is the toolset that allows us to distinguish a true alignment crafted by human intention from a compelling coincidence shaped by chance. The process begins not with grand theories, but with painstaking measurement. Using tools like theodolites and total stations, teams first create a precise three-dimensional survey of a site. Every stone, every doorway, every potential sightline is mapped to the centimeter. Next, they calculate the horizon profile from that specific vantage point. Which mountain peaks or notches would have framed the sky for an ancient observer? This step is crucial because even a slight shift in position can change the entire celestial target. With the orientation and horizon locked down, researchers turn to the sky, or rather, a digital model of it. Software like Stellarium can rewind the stars, accounting for a subtle but critical wobble in Earth's axis called precession. This slow 26,000-year cycle means the celestial pole shifts over centuries. The star we call Polaris today was not the North Star when the pyramids were built. To understand what an alignment targeted, scientists calculate the declination, the celestial latitude, that corresponds to the measured azimuth and horizon. This tells them whether a temple doorway was designed to capture the sun on a solstice, or a star like Sirius on the day it first reappeared before dawn. But the work does not end with a single perfect alignment. The final, and perhaps most important, step is statistical analysis. With hundreds of potential sightlines at a large site, some will inevitably line up with something in the sky by pure chance. Researchers like Clive Ruggles emphasize the need to test the whole set of data. Are solstice alignments significantly more common than random chance would predict? This mathematical rigor is the bedrock of the modern field. It also introduces one of the great challenges, determining what margin of error is acceptable. A builder using wooden poles and sighting cords thousands of years ago might have been off by half a degree. Is that a failed alignment or a remarkable achievement? The answer often lies in ethnographic analogy, studying the practices of living traditional cultures who maintain oral histories and sky-watching traditions, offering invaluable clues to the practical limits and symbolic intentions of their ancestors. This scientific scrutiny is beautifully illustrated by the long debate over the Orion correlation theory at Giza. The proposal that the three pyramids mirror the stars of Orion's belt is visually stunning. Some researchers point to calculated declinations and ancient texts mentioning Osiris, who was associated with that constellation, as supporting evidence. Others, applying the same statistical and methodological rigor, argue that the fit is not precise enough and that the pyramid's primary alignments are overwhelmingly to the cardinal directions and the circumpolar stars. Both sides use similar data, yet reach different conclusions, highlighting how interpretation walks a fine line between discovery and projection. This brings us to a pivotal question for our entire investigation. Equipped with laser scanners and astronomical software, are we finally decoding the true, precise message the builders encoded in stone? Or does our powerful technology and our deep desire to find order risk making us see patterns that were never there? The silent discipline of the theodolite at dawn offers a humbling answer. It reminds us that the final word belongs not to our imagination, but to the patient, repeatable measurement of light against ancient stone, a conversation with the past conducted in the clear, objective language of mathematics. High above the Patane rainforest, the canopy appears as an unbroken green sea, hiding the world below for over 1,000 years. Then, with the click of a digital filter, the forest vanishes. In its place, a sprawling metropolis materializes, a precise grid of pyramids, causeways, and reservoirs laid out with an architect's clarity. This is not magic, but the view from a LiDAR scanner, and it is revolutionizing our search for the global pattern. This second methodological deep dive takes us into the realm of remote sensing and digital archaeology, where technology is granting us a God's eye view of the ancient world, revealing connections on a scale we could never see from the ground. LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, works like a form of high-tech echolocation. A plane or drone fires millions of laser pulses at the ground. Most are reflected by leaves and branches, but a fraction penetrate to the forest floor and bounce back. By filtering out the first returns from the vegetation, computers can construct a breathtakingly detailed topographic map of the bare earth beneath. Suddenly, every mound, every terrace, every ancient road emerges from the shadows. An archaeologist with the Pacanom LiDAR initiative in Guatemala described the impact succinctly, saying it is rewriting Maya history. In a single survey, they discovered tens of thousands of previously unknown structures, transforming our understanding of population size, agriculture, and most importantly for our investigation, the sheer density and intentionality of urban planning. They found that Maya cities were not isolated ceremonial centers, but parts of vast, interconnected networks with raised causeways or sac-biob, running arrows straight for miles to connect temples and plazas in a deliberate sacred geometry. This is alignment seen not at the level of a single temple doorway, but across an entire civilization's landscape. The power of this data is unlocked by another digital tool, Geographic Information Systems, or GIS. Think of GIS as a set of intelligent, layered maps. Researchers can take the LiDAR map of a region and overlay it with geological surveys, modern river courses, and precise astronomical data. They can then ask the software sophisticated questions. Do a statistically significant number of ancient sites align with a specific mountain peak visible on the horizon? Do ceremonial pathways cluster near geological fault lines or underground water sources? This moves the study of alignments from anecdotal observation to rigorous spatial analysis. Theories about ley lines or energy grids can be tested not by drawing selective lines on a paper map, but by running algorithms that analyze the positions of thousands of sites simultaneously, searching for non-random patterns across entire continents. The technological toolkit keeps expanding. Drone photogrammetry captures tens of thousands of overlapping photographs of a site like Stonehenge or Machu Picchu, stitching them into a millimeter-accurate three-dimensional model. Researchers can then use this digital twin to test alignment theories virtually, simulating the sun's path at any date in history without ever leaving their lab. Multispectral imagery captured from satellites detects subtle differences in soil moisture and vegetation health. These differences can reveal the ghostly outlines of buried walls or plazas, tracing the footprints of structures long since erased from the surface. This is how researchers in the American Southwest have located great houses of the Chaconne culture that are invisible to the naked eye. Perhaps one of the most dramatic revelations came not from a jungle, but from the grassy fields of England. Using ground-penetrating radar, which sends radio waves into the earth to map subsurface features, the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes project made a staggering discovery. Just a short distance from the famous stone circle, they found evidence of a massive circle of buried stones, each potentially up to 4.5 meters tall, surrounding the Durrington Walls henge. This superhenge suggests the ceremonial complex was far grander and more intricate than anyone dreamed, a nested series of monuments whose alignments may have worked in concert. It was a pattern hidden not by forest but by time, waiting for the right technology to bring it back to light. All of this technology presents us with a profound and reflective question. As our digital maps of the ancient world become ever more complete, filling in the blank spaces with newly discovered cities and roads, what will we ultimately see? Will the accumulating data points gradually coalesce into that overarching blueprint, a faint but discernible global grid that confirms a lost, interconnected knowledge? Or will the picture instead become even more beautifully complex, revealing a tapestry of intensely localized traditions, each adapting the universal human language of alignment to their own unique mountains, stars, and stories? The investigation is now accelerating at an unprecedented pace. Every flight of a LiDAR plane, every drone survey, is like turning on a light in a room we have been exploring in the dark for centuries. The patterns are there, waiting in the data, and we are just beginning to learn how to read them. The digital maps from LiDAR reveal entire lost cities, but at Giza, the greatest mystery is written in plain sight upon a plateau of limestone and ambition. Here, the debate over our global pattern reaches its most intense and public crucible. The orthodox interpretation, upheld by generations of Egyptologists, presents a cohesive and magnificent vision. The pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure are primarily royal tombs, constructed around 2,500 years before the Common Era. Their staggering achievement lies in their engineering and their orientation. The Great Pyramid is aligned to the cardinal directions with an error of less than 1/10 of a degree, a feat demonstrating profound geodesic skill. The narrow shafts emanating from the king's chamber are widely accepted to have targeted specific stars, like the pole star of that era and the star Sirius, around the time of construction. This alignment served a clear theological purpose: to channel the pharaoh's soul directly into the eternal, circumpolar realm of the imperishable stars, fulfilling his destiny as a solar god. As renowned Egyptologist Zahi Hawass has stated, the pyramids are the culmination of a purely Egyptian evolution of tomb design, from mastaba to step pyramid to true pyramid. They are the ultimate expression of a culture's solar theology and belief in resurrection, firmly rooted in its own time and place. Yet another narrative whispers from the stones, one that challenges this timeline and reframes Giza as a chapter from a much older book. This is the Orion correlation theory, popularized by researchers Robert Bovell and Adrian Gilbert. They propose that the layout of the three main pyramids does not merely resemble the three stars of Orion's belt, but mirrors their precise arrangement and relative brightness as they would have appeared in the night sky around 10,500 years before the Common Era. In this view, the Nile River itself plays the role of the Milky Way. The theory extends to the Great Sphinx. Its leonine body, they argue, gazes directly east, aligning with the constellation Leo as it rose on the vernal equinox in that same distant epoch, a time the Egyptians themselves referred to mythologically as Zep-Tepi, or the first time. Bovell defends this as symbolic coherence, arguing the monument complex encodes a sacred date, a frozen moment of celestial harmony that the later pyramid builders intentionally commemorated. The most controversial evidence comes from geology. Geologist Robert Scoc's analysis of erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure suggested weathering from prolonged, heavy rainfall, a climate Egypt has not experienced since the end of the last ice age, potentially supporting a much older date for the monument's core structure. The debate hinges on a critical examination of this evidence. Mainstream archaeology points to the lack of any cultural artifacts or stratified remains from that early period at the site. The match between the pyramids and Orion's belt, while visually compelling, is not mathematically perfect. A misalignment skeptics say would be unacceptable for builders of such precision. The geological arguments remain hotly contested, with other experts attributing the erosion to wind, sand, or chemical weathering. When we use software to process the sky back to 10,500 BCE, the correlation is indeed striking, but the question persists: is it intentional design or a magnificent coincidence? The air shafts, whose alignments work perfectly for 2,500 BCE, seem to anchor the complex firmly in the dynastic period. So we are left at a crossroads of interpretation. Does Giza represent the brilliant peak of a known civilization, perfectly aligning its pharaohs' tombs to the contemporary stars? Or is it a palimpsest, a later construction built upon and encoding the sacred geometry of a forgotten first time? This case study forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the power of the patterns we seek. It asks us to consider whether the most famous monuments on Earth are final statements, or deliberate echoes of a dawn much older than history records. The cool, pre-dawn air above Angkor Wat holds a silence thick with anticipation. Below, the 5 lotus bud towers of the main temple are illuminated against the dark jungle, their familiar silhouette suddenly unfamiliar. From this vantage, they no longer seem like random peaks. They trace a specific, coiling pattern across the land, a pattern that matches a constellation circling the northern sky not today, but in an epoch lost to time. This is the heart of a second monumental reinterpretation, one that proposes the entire Angkor complex is a terrestrial map of the constellation Draco, deliberately laid out to commemorate a celestial arrangement from 11,500 years before the Common Era. If true, it would mean the Khmer Empire's crowning achievement was designed as a memory palace for a forgotten age, connecting its cosmology to a remote prehistoric moment with a boldness that rivals the Giza-Orion theory. The orthodox understanding of Angkor Wat is itself a story of profound alignment. Built in the 12th century, it is a breathtaking microcosm of the Hindu universe. Its vast moat represents the cosmic ocean, the enclosing wall the mountain ranges at the edge of the world, and the central tower is Mount Meru, the axis of all creation. Its unusual westward orientation, a departure from the typical east-facing Hindu temple, is often linked to its possible function as a funerary monument for King Suryavarman II, aligning with the setting sun and themes of the afterlife. This interpretation is supported by intricate bas-reliefs and inscriptions, placing the temple firmly within the known religious and political context of the Khmer Empire. Mainstream archaeology further explains the sprawling urban plan of Greater Angkor as a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering and political symbolism, a network of reservoirs, canals, and roads designed to harness water and project royal power across the landscape. The alternative hypothesis, advanced by researchers like John Grigsby, asks us to look beyond this immediate context to a far deeper past. It suggests the spatial relationships between key temple complexes, Angkor Wat, Angkor Thom, Pre-Con, Ta Prohm, and others, do not merely serve practical or contemporary symbolic needs. Instead, they are argued to mirror the precise positions of the stars in the Draco constellation as they circled the north celestial pole around 11,500 BCE. In this view, the temples are not just individual sacred sites, but points on a gargantuan star chart etched into the earth. The claim extends further, proposing that the layout encodes knowledge of precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, by mapping the constellation's position across millennia. When you overlay a star chart of Draco from that ancient epoch onto a satellite image of the Angkor complex, the visual parallel is undeniably striking. The central temples cluster where the constellation's head would be, with outlying temples following the serpentine tail of stars, their relative brightness seemingly reflected in the size and prominence of the structures. This idea finds some footing in the known astronomical sophistication of the Khmer. The Temple Mountain of Phnom Bakheng, built 2 centuries before Angkor Wat, is famously aligned so that its 33 towers frame the rising sun on the summer solstice. Bas-reliefs depict celestial deities and likely calendar systems. The hypothesis asks, could this documented interest be the remnant of a far older, preserved tradition? Mainstream scholars counter that the visual match, while compelling, may be an example of apophenia, our brain's tendency to find meaningful patterns in random data. They point to the immense practical constraints of city building, geography, water management, and the sequential construction of temples over centuries, which would make executing such a precise, millennia-spanning celestial blueprint incredibly difficult. The statistical case for intentionality versus coincidence remains hotly debated, so we are presented with another profound reflective question. If the Angkor-Draco correlation were validated, what would it fundamentally change? It would suggest the temple was not solely a monument to a contemporary king or a contemporary god, but a deliberate commemoration of a lost golden age, a Zep Tepi moment frozen in the Cambodian jungle. Angkor Wat would become a bridge across time, built to physically root a civilization's identity to a specific, sacred arrangement of the heavens from a remote epoch, making it a testament not just to faith, but to the endurance of astronomical knowledge across an unimaginable gulf of years. This case study, like the mystery of Giza, stretches the boundaries of conventional history, inviting us to wonder if our greatest sacred sites are anchors, holding the memory of a sky our ancestors once knew by heart. The textbook timeline of human history is a comforting story of steady ascent. We imagine a slow climb from simple hunter-gatherers to farmers, then to city builders, and finally to our modern technological age. But what if that story is not just incomplete, but in some crucial aspects backwards? The global pattern of aligned monuments forces us to confront a staggering possibility, that the seeds of sophisticated knowledge were planted far earlier than we have ever dared to believe. This is not about finding alien architects, but about radically re-evaluating the capabilities of our own ancestors. It challenges the linear, often Eurocentric, narrative of civilization's singular rise, suggesting instead a more complex rhythm of human experience, cycles of profound growth, catastrophic loss, and patient rediscovery across millennia. Historian of science James Burke offered a piercing insight into this idea, noting that what we call progress is often just a rearrangement of the same pieces. The alignments hint that some of those fundamental pieces, the core ideas of sacred geometry, celestial mechanics, and geodetic harmony, were arranged into a coherent system in a period our history books have largely left blank. If these patterns reflect a shared, ancient knowledge, then the implied capabilities of those early societies demand a complete reassessment. Consider the sheer intellectual labor encoded in stone. To orient the Great Pyramid of Giza to true north within a fraction of a degree required not just effort, but a deep, working understanding of mathematics and spherical geometry. To design a city like Teotihuacan or a complex like Angkor Wat as a precise terrestrial map of the stars implies a mastery of large-scale surveying and planning that we struggle to attribute to so-called primitive cultures. This was knowledge applied with a purpose we have largely forgotten, a fusion of science and spirit that we might call technologies of the sacred. In these systems, astronomy was not a separate discipline from engineering or theology. It was the foundational language that connected them all. The organizational skill to execute multi-generational projects, where a grand design conceived by one generation would only be completed by their great-grandchildren, speaks to a social cohesion and a long-term vision that feels almost alien to our short-term world. This leads to an unavoidable question: what tools or methods have we lost? We assume they worked with simple ropes, wooden stakes, and sighting poles, and indeed, these can achieve remarkable precision. But could there have been more? Some researchers speculate about the use of still pools of water as perfect natural levels over vast distances, or the polishing of certain crystals to create simple lenses for sharper astronomical observation. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism, a corroded bronze device recovered from a Greek shipwreck, stands as a permanent warning against our assumptions. This intricate assemblage of gears, dated to over 2,000 years ago, was a mechanical computer capable of predicting lunar phases, eclipses, and planetary positions. It proves that advanced technological thinking, of a kind we never attributed to that era, was not only possible but achieved. If such a device existed in the classical world, what might have been crafted in the millennia before, whose wooden and fiber components have long since turned to dust? The alignment suggests these builders were not just moving stones, they were manipulating concepts of space, time, and energy with a fluency we are only now relearning through satellite imagery and digital simulation. This implication does not simply add a chapter to history, it suggests we may have misread the entire book, urging a humbler, more curious approach to the silent achievements standing in plain sight. That profound re-evaluation of our past forces an uncomfortable mirror upon our present. The ancient builder's world was anchored to a mountain peak or a star's return, a dialogue written in solstice light and horizon notches. Our world is oriented by a different geometry, the grid of city blocks, the pulse of a Wi-Fi signal, the abstract flow of digital information. We navigate by subway lines and satellite coordinates, a reality utterly divorced from the seasonal rhythms and terrestrial energies that once dictated every aspect of life. This is the second, deeply personal implication of the global pattern, a profound cultural and ecological disconnect. We have gained incredible convenience, but at the cost of a participatory relationship with the living world around us. Philosopher David Abram describes this loss as a retreat from the spell of the sensuous, a fading of our direct, felt conversation with the more-than-human world. Where ancient cultures saw themselves as active participants within a conscious, ordered cosmos, modern society has largely adopted a stance of separation, viewing nature as a passive resource to be managed or exploited. This shift in perception is not merely philosophical, it is intimately linked to our current environmental crisis and a widespread sense of spiritual rootlessness. The alignment tradition, then, offers more than a historical puzzle. It presents a forgotten model of ecological insight and sustainable design. It demonstrates a way of building and living that worked with local topography, climate, and celestial cycles, not against them. A temple aligned to capture the winter sun's low angle for warmth, or a city placed to harness seasonal winds and water flow, represents a deep intelligence of place. This fostered a powerful community identity and resilience, as people understood their direct dependence on the specific landforms and skies they honored. Their long-term perspective was literally set in stone, with structures intended to serve for countless generations, a stark contrast to our often disposable, short-term planning. Interestingly, we see glimmers of this ancient wisdom returning. Modern solar architecture deliberately orients buildings to maximize passive heating and cooling, a direct application of solar alignment. The biophilic design movement seeks to reintegrate natural light, patterns, and materials into our built environments to improve well-being. Contemporary artists and architects sometimes incorporate principles of sacred geometry, seeking to create spaces that evoke that timeless sense of harmony and proportion. Yet, even our modern attempts to create order reveal the difference. Consider the Greenwich Royal Observatory in London. The prime meridian line there is a modern global axis Mundi, the agreed-upon 0 point for all longitude and timekeeping on Earth. But it is an axis imposed by political agreement and scientific convention, not one that emerged organically from the local landscape or celestial patterns. It orders our world, but it does not connect us to it in a felt, sacred way. This leads to a challenging and perhaps urgent question. In an age defined by climate instability and a pervasive sense of rootlessness, could relearning to read the subtle alignments of our own local landscapes be a step toward healing our relationship with the planet? It is not about building new stone circles, but about recovering a mode of attention. It is about noticing which way the prevailing storms arrive, where the sun sets on the longest day, which native species thrive in which microclimates. It is about designing our lives and communities with that intimate knowledge, fostering a sense of belonging and responsibility to a specific piece of the living world. The ancient pattern suggests that true sustainability may be less about advanced technology alone, and more about recovering a sacred orientation, a way of seeing ourselves not as separate controllers, but as conscious participants within a grand, aligned, and animate cosmos. A new map of the ancient world is being drawn, not by a single scholar with a compass, but by a constellation of supercomputers, satellites, and collaborative minds. The future of this mystery lies in a radical synthesis, a breaking down of the walls between disciplines that have for too long studied the same stones in isolation. We are moving toward a unified science of the past, where the data points of the archaeologist, the celestial calculations of the astronomer, the soil analysis of the geologist, and the narrative threads of the mythologist are woven into a single, searchable tapestry. Imagine a powerful artificial intelligence trained on petabytes of global data, from LiDAR scans of the Amazon to satellite surveys of the Gobi. One day, it might flag a subtle but statistically undeniable pattern, a series of alignments linking distant springs in the Sahara to mountain peaks in the Andes, suggesting a shared symbolic language of water veneration across continents. This is not science fiction, it is the emerging frontier of big data archaeology. Machine learning algorithms can process variables no human brain could correlate at scale, analyzing the orientations of tens of thousands of monuments against countless environmental factors, searching for the hidden grammar of sacred geography. As futurist Jason Silva has speculated, we may soon deploy quantum sensors, devices of unimaginable sensitivity, to passively map the faintest electromagnetic or acoustic resonances at sites like Stonehenge or the Hypogeum, measuring the very energies ancient builders might have sought to harness. The toolkit of tomorrow extends far beyond mapping. Isotopic analysis will act as a forensic science for stone, tracing the precise geological fingerprint of a monolith at Karnak back to its quarry, potentially revealing vast, forgotten trade networks that also carried ideas. Neuroscience will enter sacred spaces with portable brain scanners, helping us understand the tangible psychological impact of standing in an aligned chamber bathed in solstice light, quantifying the sense of awe or focus these spaces were engineered to evoke. Even the public will become partners through citizen science platforms, An app could guide you to a local standing stone, ask you to use your phone's compass and camera to log the horizon profile, and contribute that data to a global project like the one spearheaded by the International Society for Archaeoastronomy and Astronomy in Culture, building a living, crowd-sourced atlas of alignment. This powerful convergence demands profound ethical responsibility. These are not merely data points, they are often sacred sites belonging to living indigenous cultures. The future of discovery must be one of collaboration, not extraction. It requires listening to and incorporating traditional knowledge, working with cultural guardians, and ensuring that the quest for understanding honors the spiritual significance these places hold today. The goal is not to demystify but to comprehend with reverence, so we arrive at a pivotal question for the coming age. As our interdisciplinary tools grow exponentially more powerful, will we finally solve the central mystery of the global pattern, or will each answered question reveal three new, more baffling ones? It is likely we will uncover layers of complexity we cannot yet imagine, realizing that the alignments are not a puzzle to be solved, but a language to be continuously learned. This forward-looking perspective transforms the mystery from a relic of the past into a living, breathing adventure, an ongoing conversation between the ingenuity of our ancestors and the boundless curiosity of our future. The most profound application of this ancient knowledge requires no tools at all, only a moment of your attention. Step outside on the morning of the next equinox, that day of perfect balance between light and dark. Find a clear view to the east, perhaps from your backyard, a nearby hill, or a quiet city park. Simply watch where the sun breaks the horizon. Does it rise directly behind a distant water tower? To the left of a particular tree, this simple act of observation is the first step in a personal archaeology of the sky, a direct line to the same impulse that raised the great stones. You are not just watching a sunrise, you are beginning to map your own place within the cosmic rhythm. This is how the global pattern becomes personal, transforming from a historical mystery into a living dialogue with the world outside your door. To start, you need nothing but a fixed viewing spot and a curious mind. Choose a location you can return to, a window, a porch step, a favorite bench. On the equinox, note the exact point on your local horizon where the sun appears. You might mark it mentally against a rooftop or a hill. Then, return on the solstices around June 21st and December 21st. You will see the sunrise point has traveled, shifting north in summer and south in winter, tracing the limits of its yearly journey along the horizon. This slow dance is the very foundation of every ancient solar calendar. You can also find true north using the oldest method in the world, the shadow stick. On a sunny day, plant a straight stick vertically in level ground. Mark the tip of its shadow with a small stone. Wait 15 or 20 minutes as the shadow moves and mark the new tip. Draw a line between the two marks. This is your east-west line. Stand with your left foot on the first mark and your right on the second. You are now facing true north, just as the pyramid builders did. For a more guided exploration, free smartphone apps like Sun Surveyor or Photo Pills can show you the precise path of the sun or moon on any date, past or future, overlaid on your camera's view. You can use this to understand why a local church might have its main windows facing southeast, or how the light falls in your living room at midday in December. These are the silent alignments of your own landscape, waiting to be read. Consider the story of a small town in England where residents noticed their 19th century church spire seemed to point directly to a grassy mound on a distant hill. Research revealed the mound was a Neolithic long barrow, a tomb thousands of years older than the church. The community realized the medieval builders had not placed their spire at random, but had intentionally incorporated that much older sacred site into their own Christian landscape, creating a continuity of reverence across millennia. This kind of connection exists everywhere, often hidden in plain sight. The invitation here is deeply human. By taking a few minutes to observe the sun's appointed path, you are performing the same fundamental act of wonder that united cultures across the globe. You are not just learning about alignment, you are practicing it. What might you discover about the story written in the hills and buildings you see every day? This simple engagement turns you from a passive viewer of history into an active participant in an ongoing conversation between humanity and the cosmos.